Episode 7. When healing looks different than you expected. Welcome back. Today we are taking a look at healing. More specifically, what if healing doesn't look the way you prayed for? What if it's not instant, not dramatic, not the complete turnaround you were believing for? What if healing looks like showing up, managing, holding on to faith one day at a time? We're talking about the kind of healing no one really prepares you for. The kind that doesn't erase the journey, but changes you in the middle of it. If you've ever felt disappointed, confused, or even quietly discouraged in your healing, this episode is for you. One of the hardest lessons I've learned on this journey is that healing rarely looks the way you imagine. Before my MDS diagnosis, I pictured healing as a clean, straight line. Treatment, recovery, and back to normal. I imagined feeling strong, energetic, and whole again, almost immediately. A sweet family member of mine who walked her own road of illness said it so well. Healing is not linear. It is up and down. Healing is rarely neat. Some days it looks like small victories. Sitting outside in the sun, enjoying a quiet moment with my family, or noticing that my hands no longer tremble with fatigue. Other days, it looks like setbacks. A lab result that isn't what I hoped for, a night of restlessness, or the frustration of limits that feel invisible to others, but very real to me. I've had to learn to celebrate the little wins, even when the big picture still feels uncertain. Healing has meant redefining strength, not as the absence of weakness, but as the courage to keep going, to show up even when the body is tired and the heart is anxious. There are moments when I catch myself longing for the before diagnosis, before treatments, before the weight of fear and uncertainty, and then I remember that healing is not just about going back, it's about moving forward, even if forward looks different than I expected. Romans 8:28 reminds me, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Sometimes the good isn't what we planned. It's the strength, perspective, and resilience we never knew we had. There's another moment in this journey that really shook me. My doctor wanted me to establish care with a team at Moffitt, so I had my first appointment there in February. I went in thinking it was just part of the process, getting another perspective, continuing the plan we had already talked about. A month before that appointment in January, my doctor and I had sat down and discussed the year ahead. I had told him I needed a heads up so I can be prepared mentally for all of the steps. We made a plan. There were still a few treatment options to try. The bone marrow transplant was something for later, something further down the road. So I walked into the Moffitt appointment, expecting alignment. But instead, I heard something completely different. The doctor looked at me and said, "The next step is a bone marrow transplant." I remember just sitting there, trying to process what I had just heard, because that was not what I expected. That wasn't the plan. Not yet. Not now. I felt like everything shifted in a single moment. The timeline I had in my head, gone. The plan I thought I was following evaporated. Suddenly, everything changed. And if I'm honest, I felt unprepared and completely blindsided. I wasn't ready to hear that this was the next step. I wasn't ready to move into that phase so soon. There was a part of me that wanted to hold on to the original plan, to slow things down, to stay in what felt familiar just a little longer. But that moment forced me to face something deeper. Even when I think I understand the path, God may still lead me a different way. And just like that, I had a choice: to resist what I didn't expect, or to trust that even the shift was part of His plan for my healing. And that's the tension I've been walking in, holding on to faith while letting go of what I thought this journey would look like. Our picture versus God's process. Most of us have a picture of healing. It's dramatic. It's immediate. It's complete. We imagine the moment when everything goes back to the way it was. Energy restored, numbers normal, life uninterrupted. But sometimes healing doesn't erase the journey. Sometimes it transforms you in it. In Isaiah 55:8 it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." That verse has become very real to me, because His way of healing may not match my expectation, but it's never careless. My expectation was not to walk through a bone marrow transplant. When I first heard the words bone marrow transplant, I felt a swirl of emotions I couldn't put into order: fear, hope, uncertainty. But mostly I felt the weight of knowing this was the next step, the one step that could change everything. Preparing for transplant is not just about scheduling procedures or monitoring lab results. It's about preparing your mind, your heart, and your spirit. It's about facing a reality that is both terrifying and full of potential. Emotionally, I had to come to terms with the vulnerability of this journey. I thought about my family, how much I want to be there for them, to see milestones and small joys. I thought about the people who have walked this road before me, about their courage and how that courage could become my own. Physically, the preparation is intense. Every lab, every appointment, every infusion feels like both a hurdle and a signpost marking the path forward. I remind myself that each step is bringing me closer to healing. Each small act, drinking enough water, resting, taking my medications, staying as strong as I can, matters more than I ever realized. Spiritually, I cling to hope. Psalm 46:1 says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." These words have become my anchor. Faith doesn't mean I'm not afraid. It means I trust that I'm not walking this alone. There are days when I wonder if I'll have enough energy to face what's coming, and then there are glimpses of peace. Moments when I look at my family, when I take a deep breath, when I feel gratitude for the care I'm receiving, and I know that fear does not get the final word. For anyone listening who might be on a similar journey, I want you to know it's okay to feel everything. It's okay to be scared. But don't let fear silence your hope, your faith, or your courage. Each small step you take is preparing you for the next, and each moment of trust is building strength you can't always see, but it's there. Healing is not always a moment. Sometimes healing is a process. Sometimes it looks like learning how to live wisely, adjusting expectations, becoming stronger emotionally, deepening spiritually. I used to think healing meant returning to the old version of me. Now I see that healing might mean becoming a different version of me, more dependent, more aware, more compassionate. Peace is also healing. There is a kind of healing that happens inside, even if the diagnosis remains. When I heard the Lord say, "Your steps are ordered by me," something healed in my spirit immediately. Fear loosened, panic subsided, and peace settled. Sometimes the greater miracle is not instant change, it's unwavering peace. As I take the next step and prepare for my bone marrow transplant, I remind myself daily, whatever your healing looks like today, it is not random, it is not forgotten, it is not without purpose. Your steps are still ordered. Even when the path looks different, the journey is part of the healing. In Jeremiah 30:17 it says, "But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." That verse is so comforting, but I've come to realize something deeper about it on this journey. Restoration may not always mean reversal. God does not only restore health, but He heals our wounds, wounds of disappointment and unexpected turns on this healing journey. It doesn't always mean going back to the way things were before. It doesn't always mean the diagnosis disappears or that life returns to what felt normal. Sometimes restoration and healing look different than we expected. Sometimes it means strengthening what has been shaken. It means God meeting you right in the middle of the diagnosis, right in the middle of the uncertainty, and rebuilding you from the inside out. It's a deeper kind of healing, a healing of your heart, a healing of your perspective, a healing of your faith. I have felt that. There are parts of me that feel more anchored now than they were ever before, not because everything is easy, but because I've seen God sustain me in ways I've never had to rely on before. Restoration for me has looked like courage on days I felt afraid, peace in moments that didn't make sense, strength when my body felt weak. It's God saying, even here, I am making something whole. And maybe that's what some of us need to hear today. That even if things don't go back to how they were, it doesn't mean God isn't restoring. He may be restoring you in a deeper way, in a lasting way, in a way that will carry you through not just this season, but every season ahead. So I want to ask you, what in your life feels broken or shaken right now? And could it be that God is not just trying to take it away, but is gently restoring you within it? Letting go of the timeline. One of the hardest parts of the journey has been releasing the timeline. We like timelines. We like deadlines. We like outcomes. We like closure. We want to know when things will get better, when the treatment will work, when life will feel normal again. There's something in us that craves resolution. But healing doesn't always follow our calendar. It doesn't move according to our plans or fit neatly into the time frames we create in our minds. And that has been one of the biggest stretches for me, because letting go of the timeline means letting go of control. It means waking up and saying, God, I don't know when, but I trust you anyway. In Ecclesiastes 3:11 it says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. In its time, not mine. And that's not always easy to accept, because His time can feel slow. It can feel uncertain. It can feel like waiting longer than we think we should have to. But I'm learning that God is not late. He is intentional. There are things He is doing in the waiting that could never happen if everything moved according to my timeline. He's building endurance. He's deepening my faith. He's teaching me how to trust Him, not just for the outcome, but in the process. Trusting His timing has become part of my healing. Not just physical healing, but heart healing. Because every day I choose to trust His timing, I feel something shift inside of me. Less striving, less anxiety, more surrender, more peace. It doesn't mean I don't still wonder when. It doesn't mean I don't still have hard days. But it means I'm learning to rest in who holds the timeline instead of trying to control it myself. So maybe the question for you today is this: what timeline are you holding onto so tightly? And what would it look like to gently place it back into God's hands? Because beauty is still coming, just in His time. Healing can be quiet. Not all healing is visible. Some of it looks like increased resilience, deeper faith, a steadier mind, a more grateful heart. I may still go for blood work, I may still monitor numbers, but I am not the same woman who walked into that ER. I am stronger, calmer, more anchored, and that too is healing. Maybe you're listening and feeling disappointment. Maybe you've prayed for immediate breakthrough. Maybe you believed for a different outcome. It's okay to acknowledge that, but don't assume that different means absent. God is still working, even when the method surprises you. There was a moment recently in the middle of preparing for my bone marrow transplant that I don't think I'll ever forget. It wasn't during a big appointment. It wasn't when a doctor said something significant. It didn't come with answers or clarity. It was actually a very quiet, ordinary moment. I was sitting at home, just me and my thoughts, looking at my calendar, and it was full. Appointments, lab work, consults, preparation steps. Every square on the calendar felt like it was pointing to one thing. This is really happening. Not someday, not in theory, not something I could mentally prepare for later. Now. And in that moment, everything felt very real. I could feel the weight of what's ahead. The unknowns, the physical toll, the recovery. And if I'm being honest, fear showed up. Not loud at first, but steady. It sounded like quiet questions in my mind. What if this is harder than I expect? What if my body doesn't respond the way I'm hoping? What if I'm not as strong as I need to be? And I just sat there staring at the calendar, feeling the tension between what I know by faith and what I feel in my humanity. It was one of those moments where you realize this is bigger than you. And for a second, I felt small. But right there, in that stillness, something shifted. Not everything around me, but something inside me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. It was quiet. A gentle peace that didn't make sense in the moment, but it was real. And the thought came to my heart so clearly. You don't have to carry all of this today. Just today. Just this step. You don't have to live through the transplant today. You don't have to figure out every outcome. You don't have to answer every what if. Just trust me here. I took a deep breath and I looked at that same calendar again. But this time, I didn't just see appointments. I saw preparation. Each lab wasn't just another needle. It was my body being prepared. Each appointment wasn't something to fear. It was part of the bigger plan unfolding. Each step wasn't random. It was ordered. And something inside me settled. Because I realized healing wasn't just waiting for me on the other side of the transplant. It was already happening. In the way fear was losing its grip. In the way peace was taking its place. In the way I was learning to trust God in a deeper, more real way than I ever had before. I may not feel ready for everything that's ahead, but I'm being prepared. And there is a difference. That moment didn't change my diagnosis. It didn't change the road in front of me, but it changed me. It reminded me that healing is not always about changing your circumstances right away. Sometimes it's about strengthening you within them. And sometimes that quiet strengthening, that deep, steady peace, is the very beginning of healing. When healing looks different than you expected, you have a choice. You can cling to the picture you had, or you can trust the hand that is leading you. If the path has changed, if the timeline feels unfamiliar, if you feel unprepared for what's next, you are not behind. You are being prepared. Prepared for strength you didn't know you had. Prepared for faith that goes deeper than feelings. Prepared for peace that doesn't depend on outcomes. I still believe in miracles, but I also believe in something just as powerful. A God who sustains you step by step, day by day, even when healing looks different than you expected. Your story is not over. Your healing is not absent. And your steps are still ordered. And sometimes the greater miracle is not instant change. It's unwavering peace. Whatever your healing looks like today, know this. It is not random. It is not forgotten. And it is not without purpose. Your steps are still ordered. If this resonated with you, share it with someone whose health journey looks different than they imagined. Like it by clicking the thumbs up, follow me by clicking the bell sign. This will help me reach more people. Until next time, stay anchored.